don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Never tell me the odds.
The greatest idea in human history, the theory of evolution by natural selection.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
As the date with destiny. In order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive.
We're living in captivity, and it's time to break free.
Welcome to A Wilder Life with Eric Edmeades.
Welcome to A Wilder Life. I'm Eric Edmeades, your host, and I am very excited about this episode and the series that it begins. I believe it would be fair to say that it is unique. Here's why. If you've been following me for any length of time, you'll know that I've spent a good part of the last 15 years visiting with the Hadza people of East Africa, and I've become quite good friends with Nona, one of the chiefs there, and he's just a phenomenal guy. And if we pronounce that properly, it's probably closer to Nona. In any event, every time I go off to Africa, friends of mine write to me and they go, hey, could you ask them about this? And can you ask them about that? In fact, years ago, I was on tour with Tony Robbins, and he asked me to ask two really interesting questions. What do they believe to be the purpose of life? And what happens after we die? And I took those questions off. I went to Africa. I asked those questions, got the answers, and it was really fascinating. And that inspired me to create this series. And don't worry, the answers to those questions are coming because they were asked again by one of our guests. And so what I did is I went out to my network, I went out to my friends and said, would you like to ask a question of Nona? And so a number of my friends recorded video messages. I flew down to Africa, played the video messages for Nona, had them translated, and then recorded his answers, translated those, and subtitled them. So you get to hear the questions and answers from Nona, and that, I believe, qualifies as unique. So what that means is that in this series, you're going to hear from some truly phenomenal people. You're going to hear from my very good friend, Bruce Music. You're going to hear from Jay Shetty. And in this particular episode, you're going to hear from Shelley Lefko. You're going to hear from Helena. You're going to hear from Greg Wells. It's going to be really, really fantastic. So let's jump right in. And so let's turn to our first question, which is going to come from Helena. Helena was once a supermodel, traveling around the world with glitz and flashing bulbs and what have you, and today has devoted herself to healing feminine energy and bringing great femininity into the world. She is an angel. She's absolutely fantastic. And her question was all about health. Okay, this next one is from Helena in Bali.
Hello, I am Helena, and thank you so much for this opportunity to ask. Thanks, Eric. Thank you all. My question would be, how do you use our healing abilities within ourselves, especially connected with life force, the sexual energy? Thank you.
Mtana aya Helena.
Greetings, Helena. My name is Nona. Thank you for your question. We Hadza know that when one of our people looks cold and has difficulty breathing, these are signs that they are getting sick. We will then go to the bush to dig for roots that we know are medicinal. We will bring them to the sick person to eat. Or, if they are unable to do that, we will make a tea from the roots and give it to them to drink. If the problem is in the stomach, the person will get diarrhea immediately after drinking the medicine and will feel better afterwards. After the person has finished having diarrhea, we will go hunting to get soup and meat for them to eat so that they can recover. Thank you.
Well, that certainly takes a different perspective on things, and it shows us something, that it's very difficult to have questions and answers directly, literally, because even in translation, there are massive cultural differences that make the meanings from any question very different. You'll see that continue. Now we're going to turn to a question from Greg Wells. Now, Greg Wells is a PhD scientist working in sports performance and a great guy. And his question was all about environment and the importance of it. This question is from Greg in Canada.
Hi, I'm Greg Wells, and really honored to be able to speak with you. One of the questions I'm wondering about is, I love being outdoors. I love nature. I'm in Canada, and so you can see that's snow. And so I'm just wondering about your environment and the power of nature and the trees and the plants and the animals. I just would love to know about the meaning of that for you, because I know the meaning of the mountains and the snow is everything for me and my family as well. So any thoughts that you have about how your environment, how nature makes your life better, or even just like makes your life, because I know that it's so important for all of you, would be really interesting to hear about. Thank you so much for letting me ask you a question. Honored and privileged to communicate with you, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Greetings, Greg. No problem. We Hadza, we cannot stay in a place like that with no bush. We always stay in the bush, where there are so many trees and big rocks and lots of success with hunting. If we stay in a place like yours, we will suffer a lot because you cannot hunt there. It is too open and the wind disturbs us a lot. We have never been in a place with snow like yours. Always we have been in the bush or in the big rocks. We have a place like Gorafani where our villagers cut down trees to make it more open. We cannot stay there either or enjoy it like we do in the bush. If we stay in a place like yours with snow, without proper warm clothes, we might get sick and die. Greg, I advise you to move from that place because you might even die because of the cold. Thank you.
So I am forced to wonder if that was the first time Nona had ever seen snow. I'm not sure if he's ever been close enough to Kilimanjaro to see the glaciers up there, and I don't think he's been to the top. But still, his answer, the integration into nature, you can see what a big role it plays in his existence and his idea of the world, because it's where he lives. Now, we're going to turn to two questions from Shelley Lefko. Shelley Lefko is a really good friend of mine, and one of her favorite topics is about parenting. She is a child advocate in every possible way. And so, of course, her first question has to do with parenting.
The other thing is, I wanted to know what your philosophy was on raising children. What do you think about when you think about having children and being a parent? What is that like for you? Is it something that you talk about in your tribe? Is it something that you think a lot about? So those are my questions.
As a man of the family, I have to work hard and get food for my family because it is my responsibility. When my family has enough food, it makes me happy and the whole family happy as well. When I go to sleep and wake up and see that my children have no food, I must organize my group to go far from where we know we must get enough food for our family. So my responsibility as the father of the family with my wife is to care for the family and make sure that they have enough food so they grow up safely. After our boys grow up, we must start teaching them how to use bows and arrows to prepare them for hunting. They must hunt and become good at it so they can take care of us when we get old, just as we did for them when they were young. When we get old, we will be able to hunt anymore or do anything else. They will have to take care of us. At the time, we will be only depending on them to feed us because we will not be able to do anything.
Excellent.
You can see that in their answers, they're really focused on very much the practical, that Nona thinks very practically about what parenting is about and what children are about and so on. And I find that just absolutely fascinating. Now, Shelley turned her attention to something else, and that was how they feel about sadness.
The next question is from Shelley in the United States.
Hi, I'm Shelley Lefko, and it's an honor to be speaking with you. I would like to know two things. One is, I'd like to know a lot of things because I am fascinated and would love to sit down and actually talk to you. But what I'd like to know is, are you happy? And do you ever get sad? Do you feel strong emotions? And when you do, how do you handle that?
Mtana aya Shelly.
Greetings, Shelley. When I go to the bush and shoot an animal, and unfortunately it runs away, and someone else discovers it, I express my frustration. This is the thing that makes me feel the worst.
I have to say, I found that answer fascinating even before I heard the translation. It was really interesting because you see what he's talking about is, hey, an emotion comes up, and then what do I do with that? What do I channel that energy with? In fact, I'll tell you that years ago, I asked him about sadness, and I asked him if they had depression there, and they didn't understand the word for depression. And so we had to translate it as long-term sadness. And what was really fascinating about that is he said, yes, they did have long-term sadness. They did have it. And I thought I'd never witnessed it. I'd never seen any depression. But then I said, well, how long is this long-term sadness? And he goes, oh, sometimes 2 days, maybe even 3. I was okay. I said, so, why is it so short? Like, what's the coping mechanism? And he said, well, what happens after 2 or 3 days of sadness is you get thirsty and hungry. So you have to get up and move. Wow. I mean, that is incredibly practical. In our world, we are, say, dealing with sadness, and we don't have to get up and move. In fact, we can go and find foods that like numb out our sadness. In their world, it's like, well, I got to get up and move my biochemistry. And that plays a big role, as we know, in changing the way we feel. Once I even asked them if they had suicide. And that had to be defined for him because they don't have that experience. They don't know what that is. And when I explained what it was, he was shocked. And the man sleeping in the cave behind him was a bushman. He started laughing, like what I'd said couldn't be true. It couldn't be real. And so once they accepted that it was real, he then started asking me how people do it. Like, how do they do this? And I told him, I said, some people use guns, which he thought was horrific. I mean, they don't have them, but they know what guns are. And then some people jump off very high things. He hated that idea because that's a serious threat for them. They can fall out of trees or fall off cliffs. Like, falling is not, that was not a nice idea for him. And then I mentioned that some people use poison to do that, or pills and that sort of thing. And he decided that if ever he felt the need, that would be his preferred method of choice. It was a fascinating conversation. But what I want to point out here is that the way they cope with emotions is much more, in a sense, natural than the way we do, because they don't have the temptations of social media, Netflix, drugs, and food in the same way that we do. And so I hope that you have enjoyed these questions from Greg and from Helena and from Shelley. And I know you're going to enjoy the very next episode just as much, because here you're gonna hear from my very good friend Bruce Music, who runs Love at First Fight. He's a relationship expert, a total counselor, a really amazing man, and one of my best friends in the world. And so I think you're gonna like that episode a lot. Tune in. And by the way, hold on. Remember to like and subscribe, of course. And I think right now you can probably think of at least 2 or 3 people, or 30, that you should share this episode with. I'll see you in the next episode.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of A Wilder Life. Please leave a review and share it. A Wilder Life with Eric Edmeades.